Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're diving straight into, well, quite a stack of recent reports and analyses, mostly from conservative media sources.
That's right. We're looking at how they're framing stories and policy discussions around crime, border security, and government accountability.
Our mission, as always, is to cut through some of the noise, try to uncover the critical insights that maybe get missed in, the broader narratives.
So you can stay well informed on the realities impacting communities, as seen through this particular lens.
Exactly. We're going to start with some immediate news that's really sparked a lot of conversation in these sources.
You mean the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt?
Yeah. She recently confronted the press pretty directly, accused them of ignoring critical issues.
And she specifically highlighted that awful stabbing and murder of Irina Zaruska on the Charlotte Light Rail by DeCarlos Brown Jr.
Right. And the sources we looked at emphasized that new footage of the suspect came out after, well, what they describe as initial attempts to dismiss the case.
And that's feeding into these broader concerns, or at least the arguments being made, about media priorities versus public safety.
Leavitt's call-out itself, according to these analyses, got a lot of attention.
It really underlines this perceived disconnect, doesn't it, between what these sources see as vital safety news and what gets mainstream focus. It kind of sets the stage for our discussion.
And it's not just that one case. Our sources also go into detail on the alleged attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
By Ryan Ruth, yeah. Indicted by a federal grand jury. His courtroom behavior recently, apologizing to jurors, that's been noted.
And then there are these local tragedies mentioned too. A 16-year-old girl stabbed near an Orlando skating rink, a motorcyclist killed in Florida.
It seems these sources are kind of grouping these diverse incidents together.
To underscore a sense of urgency around public safety, maybe?
That seems to be the implication.
So as we dig into these reports, the central question they seem to pose is, are leaders truly focused on public safety? Or are critical issues perhaps being deliberately overlooked?
That's the question hanging in the air. Let's try to unpack it.
Okay, let's start with this first segment, focusing on public safety and justice. The sources we have show a really striking focus on how crime is framed.
Yeah, especially what's being reported versus, well, what's not being reported in some outlets, according to these analyses.
There's this consistent theme across the conservative media sources we review.
A perceived gap, right?
Right.
Between a lot of media coverage and what they argue is genuine public concern, particularly about violent crime.
Take that Charlotte case again, the murder of Irina Zaruska.
Right. And former President Trump's reaction, described in our sources as a brutal plan in response.
And again, it was Caroline Leavitt calling out the press for, quote, ignoring it. An action these reports say really got noticed.
And the sources also detail this backlash against CNN's Abby Phillip and Van Jones.
For trying to demonize Charlie Kirk.
Apparently for racializing the incident. Especially, the reports note, after new footage of Brown Jr. surfaced.
So the sources use this to ask, who gets to define the narrative around crime, especially when it's sensitive.
And that leads straight into another key point from these sources, the situation in what they often call blue cities.
They paint a pretty stark picture there.
Definitely. Cities grappling with safety challenges, and these analyses often link those struggles directly to, well, liberal governance.
They highlight that anecdote about LA Mayor Karen Bass quite a bit.
Yeah, the reports mentioned she pushed for policies to lower the prison population, and then her own house was burglarized.
It's presented as this direct link, policy impacting personal safety.
Exactly, a way to connect decisions to outcomes very directly in their narrative.
And Chicago comes up too.
Right. Correspondent Nick Shirley reportedly embedding with gangs there, showing this daily reality of gun violence.
Which these analyses suggest contrasts with some other discussions happening elsewhere.
And then there's that exchange noted between Morning Joe's Joe Scarborough and Eddie Glaude.
About crime stats.
Yeah, Scarborough reportedly pressed Glaude on stats, and the sources describe the result as silence about what Black communities actually want regarding crime.
Implying a desire for maybe more concrete data? Community-focused solutions that aren't always front and center.
That seems to be the argument, that there's a need for different kinds of conversations and data.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you, the listener? These aren't just random stories in these reports. They're building a picture.
A picture of potentially misaligned national priorities, particularly around crime and justice, from this specific viewpoint.
Yeah. What stands out to you about how these situations are being discussed in the materials we've looked at?
It definitely gives you a different perspective to consider.
Okay, so building on that, let's shift to immigration. This is a huge focus in the sources we reviewed.
Absolutely. And they offer a very strong conservative perspective on border security and the impacts of current policies.
You see a clear argument being made for, well, a much tougher approach.
Yeah, a more robust approach, definitely, focused on national sovereignty, rule of law, but also the practical effects on communities.
For example, they talk a lot about former President Trump's plans.
Right, ramping up ICE raids, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement for mass deportations.
Specifically targeting sanctuary cities, often in blue states.
And these sources characterize that plan as, quote, a brutal threat, something that apparently scared those cities quite a bit.
And it wasn't just talk, right? The sources mention a new executive order aimed at sanctuary cities.
Which reportedly shocked the White House press corps when announced.
And this Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, they have a plan too.
Yeah, to massively reduce federal employee numbers to handle deportations, according to the reports.
And down in Florida, there's talk of Alligator Alcatraz.
Huh. Yeah, that's the reported nickname for a controversial plan announced by Attorney General James Youthmeyer.
To build an ICE detention facility in the Everglades, a move also associated with Governor DeSantis.
So very concrete, sometimes provocative proposals being discussed.
And these proposals are often framed around concerns about, well, migrant crime and security.
Exactly. The sources cite the tragic death of Ava Moore, the 18-year-old on the jet ski.
Reportedly caused by Venezuelan illegal migrants trying to flee.
That's how it's presented, yeah, as a direct consequence of, in their view, lax border policies.
There are also these reports, quite alarming ones, about ISIS-linked migrants.
Yes, claims of 400 crossing illegally with 50 allegedly unlocated, raising, as you'd expect, national security questions within these analyses.
And this ties back to local politics, too, like L.A. Mayor Karen Bass reportedly fighting ICE raids.
To protect LA's sanctuary city status, according to the sources.
We also see figures like former border czar Tom Homan reacting to attacks on ICE agents.
And his testimony on shows like The Ingram Angle about the border situation gets highlighted.
Even Elon Musk gets mentioned.
For suggesting what the sources call a very reasonable idea to address dangers at the southern border.
So, turning to the current administration, the Biden administration, the sources express significant concern.
Very much so. Brandon Judd, the National Border Patrol Council president, is quoted describing a dark reality to Fox News.
And policies like California are offering health insurance to undocumented immigrants.
That's cited as a major point of contention, raising questions about public services and, well, national identity from this perspective.
These details, pulled together from our sources, they paint a really vivid picture. For many, an alarming one.
It certainly presents a stark view of the border situation.
What implications does this conservative take, laid out so clearly in these reports, have for how we think about national identity and public services? It's a heavy question posed by this material.
It really is. It forces you to grapple with some fundamental disagreements about the border.
So we've looked at public safety, we've looked at immigration, all through this specific conservative lens provided by our sources.
Right. Now let's turn to how these narratives themselves get shaped, or, as these sources often argue, misshaped.
Particularly by the mainstream media and the pushback against it.
It raises that crucial question, doesn't it? In this flood of information, how do you find the truth? Especially when political narratives clash so fiercely.
And what role do different media outlets play?
The analyses we read consistently point to what they call pervasive media bias. We already mentioned Caroline Levin calling out the press.
In Donald Trump's comments about moderator bias during the ABC News debate with Kamala Harris.
That was a big discussion point in these reports, too. His blunt analysis, as they put it.
The sources go further, though. They claim alternative and independent media are, quote, destroying mainstream media.
Yeah, pointing to alleged major layoffs at CNN and claims Comcast is putting MSNBC up for sale. Though we should note, those are specific claims from these sources.
And then there's the example of Jake Tapper.
Right. Described as spending years calling reports of Joe Biden's cognitive decline a conspiracy theory.
Only to then announce a book titled Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again.
Presented in these sources as a major contradiction, obviously highlighting perceived media hypocrisy.
Which leads right into this focus on Biden's health and an alleged cover-up.
Exactly. Lindy Lynn, a former Kamala Harris campaign advisor, reportedly voiced concerns.
About his cognitive decline and a cover-up by party officials, even leaking info.
According to these reports, yes.
Yeah.
And then there's Mark Zuckerberg's alleged comments to Joe Rogan.
About pressure from the Biden administration on Facebook.
Did censor posts about COVID vaccine safety. That's the claim reported, presented as quite shocking.
And another example cited is CNN's Jake Tapper again, and others.
Reportedly caught trying to blame the Guadalupe River flooding deaths on Donald Trump. Framed as clear narrative deflection by these sources.
Wow, so clearly media credibility is under intense fire in these analyses.
Absolutely. And alongside that, there's a strong pushback against what the sources term woke ideology and DEI initiatives.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Elon Musk comes up again here.
His statements about the real danger of the woke mind virus, his term for criticizing political correctness and identity politics, are frequently cited.
And he connects it directly to his political shift, right?
Yes, saying the Democratic Party's support for DEI and what he calls a war on meritocracy led him to back the Republican Party.
That's a powerful connection made there.
And you also see Jordan Peterson mentioned, warning about a potential woke right.
Conservatives may be adopting similar tactics.
That seems to be the concern raised in that quote. And J.D. Vance's CPAC speech defending masculinity gets highlighted.
As a significant cultural moment in these circles.
Definitely. And finally, Sage Steele, the former ESPN host.
Her account of ESPN's culture going woke after Trump's election.
Yeah, and her views on transgender athletes in women's sports. It's all part of this broader cultural critique found in our sources.
So that's just a snapshot, really, of these intense battles over truth, narrative, and ideology as presented in these conservative analyses.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. How do you, listening, navigate this landscape? How do you form your own opinions when the narratives are so strongly contested, especially from perspectives challenging the mainstream?
It's the central challenge for all of us, I think.
Well, we've certainly navigated some challenging waters today, from those really passionate debates on public safety and immigration.
To the intense scrutiny we just discussed of political narratives and media influence.
It's really clear that the discussions happening in these conservative media circles we reviewed are, well, fervent, they're pointed.
And they're undeniably driving a significant part of today's political conversation, offering a very distinct viewpoint on the nation's challenges.
Absolutely. And understanding these perspectives, even if, they clash with your own views, it seems essential.
It really is. For getting a comprehensive picture of the challenges our country faces, it pushes critical thinking.
Helps you see the different angles influencing policy and where society might be heading, especially when you engage with analysis from a specific, focused viewpoint like this.
Couldn't agree more.
So, as we wrap up, thinking about the future, about these ongoing debates over how our society should work, maybe ask yourself this. What happens to a nation when trust in institutions, whether that's political institutions or journalistic ones, starts to erode?
That's a deep question.
And maybe more importantly, what are you willing to do to help ensure we have a robust, honest public square? A place where different viewpoints, like the ones we explored today, can actually be examined and understood?
Something definitely worth thinking about.